Welcome back to theCUBE, coming to you here from our studio at the New York Stock Exchange. This is one of our NYSE Wired programs, AI Factories. And joining me today is the CEO of SambaNova, Rodrigo Liang. Welcome, Rodrigo.
Thank you so much.
So you're in town because you've got some very big news. You've announced a new chip today and also a very interesting partnership with Intel.
Yes.
Let's start there. Unpack it for me.
Yeah, no, really excited. 3 announcements today. One, we're announcing SM50. That's our 5th generation chip, focused on cloud scale inference, ultra low power. And so really excited about that. 2, we're announcing a multi-year partnership with Intel. This is something we're excited about, building products together and delivering that to really streamline the AI product market, as well as going to market together for some of the largest accounts that are out there that really are looking for much, much more efficient AI computing. And then 3rd, we are announcing our 350 million plus oversubscribed round. This is our Series E round, and so this is something that's super exciting for us because it allows us to drive everything that we want to do for the foreseeable future when it comes to building new technology, new infrastructure into the market.
Wow, well that's all pretty major news in 1 week, right? Most companies would aim to have that sort of news over a decade, so congrats.
Yeah, thank you. We're super excited. All things came together very quickly and we wanted to share it with you all at the same time.
Well, let's start with the chip. Let's start with the SN50, which has replaced, or I guess it's an improvement to the SN40L, right?
Right.
What has fundamentally changed, Rodrigo? I know you have spoken a lot in the past. You've been on the show in our Palo Alto studio, and you've talked about the difference in the inference world versus the training world, right?
Right.
Maybe talk me through the types of use cases that this chip is primed for.
Yes, well, so let's talk about what hasn't changed, right? So if you think about inference, is still about high performance, real-time applications, and so you want very, very low latency, very, very high throughput. You still care a lot about power. SM40 was 10 kilowatts. This is also going to be very low power, up to 19 kilowatts. So really, really low power infrastructure compared to existing infrastructure that's 100, 150 kilowatts per rack, right? And so those haven't changed as far as focus on energy efficiency and throughput. What's changed now is people are thinking about agentic solutions. And so what's different when it comes to agentic versus a traditional LLM is today with a large model, all of us can send all of our requests to a single model. And so you can actually batch it together and make it really efficient. But as the agents are coming in, everybody wants their own customized versions. So it's really hard to share. Right? Sharing models on infrastructure becomes nearly impossible because you want an agent, I want an agent, everybody uses a slightly different agent. And so now you have this problem where in order to serve those, the economics of the cloud providers is really poor. And so with SM50 now we're delivering a product, cloud scale, that allows you to deliver ultra high performance for the end user, but incredible economics for the service provider that has to provide agentic solutions.
So would you say you have an ideal buyer persona? Like, is that somebody who's looking for kind of an agentic AI solution end to end? I know you've spoken in the past about kind of sovereign AI and being able to serve countries and locations that don't have the ability or the CapEx abilities of a hyperscaler, right?
Right.
Who are your kind of customer profiles? Who is the ideal scenario for the SN50?
Well, the cloud providers are going to be cloud scale, and so anybody, whether that's a neo cloud or a sovereign cloud or even the hyperscale clouds, those are all going to be very, very important targets for us because if you think about where they're going, the traffic is hybrid already. Most of these clouds are heterogeneous. They're using GPUs and other technologies to run these applications. And so if you have a technology that runs a particular type of AI, a particular type of model, faster than the traditional ones, you should route the traffic over there. And for SambaNova, for these types of agentic models, we're better than anybody else. So that traffic can be routed over here, and that frees up dozens of NVIDIA racks or whatever traditional racks you have to run other things. And so that's the model that we see people using, whether that's a neo cloud, whether that's sovereign cloud or hyperscale cloud. They're starting to use this in a heterogeneous mode and running the traffic that runs best on that technology and then allowing them to dynamically move those things around.
And are they like developers who don't necessarily have their own rack space? Are they, large corporates, large enterprises? Are they countries, or who exactly is this serving first, I guess, in terms of the most immediate need?
Yeah, well, we're also seeing 2 other trends. One is, and it's a great point that you brought up about sovereign. Many countries want to see their data remain within the country, right, within the borders. Similar things exist with a lot of businesses. Think about banks and insurance companies, that their data needs to be protected. Some things they can use public models for and share, using, say, ChatGPT. Others they can't, because their data is audited, and you can't let it out into the wild. And so our technology becomes a really, really good alternative for people that want to deploy privately, securely, because at 10 kilowatts, air-cooled, you can roll it into any existing data center that you have, whether that's an edge data center that a lot of people are talking about these days, or your own private secure data center that you might have here in the New York Stock Exchange, right? You can, wherever you have it, you can actually deploy these air-cooled 10 kilowatt racks and keep your data private and secure for those types of applications.
And that is the only cooling format you guys deliver on, right? You don't do liquid cooling or any of the others?
Yet, because it's so low power, we haven't actually needed to move over to liquid. We're looking at it as far as when should we start introducing the liquid. But if you look at kind of the racks that exist today, they use liquid is because they're 100, 200 kilowatts per rack, and at 10 kilowatts in SM40 and 19 kilowatts in SM50, you're so low in power that we can use air-cooled. And the beauty of air-cooled is 85% of data centers that exist in the world today are air-cooled. And so if that's kind of what already exists. You're not forcing the buyers to come in and retrofit data centers every time they want to buy SambaNova rack, which many of our customers have talked to us about, that every time they want to use newest technology, they have to go and do an entire retrofit of the data center, which is really expensive. And so using air-cooled, standard 19-inch rack, rolling into existing data centers is a great way for people to get going quickly without having to spend all that money on the data center side itself.
So you're kind of winning on power and you're winning on per water, right? Per usage. Tell me, it seems as though we all know there's some big incumbents in this space, right? And it can seem from an outside perspective like it is a lot to chase these folks down.
Yeah.
What's the magic, how can you magically create, I guess, or, I'm sure it's nothing magical about this, it's taken years of hard work, but what is the secret sauce to create something that is 5x on output and 3x less on cost? Like, what is so unique about this?
Well, I think the architecture matters a lot, right? And so, no doubt, like you said, I mean, people are using NVIDIA GPUs broadly, right? And so that architecture is 30 years in the making, right? If you look at kind of the NVIDIA journey, and they've done a tremendous job securing that infrastructure play with most of the largest players in the world. And if you look at that history, it also comes with things that they can't change, or it's harder to change because that's the architecture of that chip. And so SambaNova, being a new grounds-up technology, allows us to focus on certain applications, certain types of models, inferencing, agentic solutions, and really optimize the architecture for that. And once you start with that basic, which is a very different structure where you're using data flow, you're using 3-tier memory, which we can, I know your audience is very technical and wants to understand, well, exactly how you use 3-tier memory, where a traditional GPU only really has HBM, we have DDR and HBM and a lot of SRAM. And if you use those technologies in the right way, you're now starting to produce outcomes that are dramatically better. And it's really hard to incrementally improve on legacy architectures where a grounds-up design allows you the opportunity to do so.
So let's talk a little bit about underneath the hood of the competitive dynamic.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a sales guy for SambaNova.
Yeah.
I am out pitching against companies like NVIDIA.
Yeah.
I assume that there are a lot of enterprises just sweating the NVIDIA asset, right? They have those chips in place. They need to basically, sweat out that CapEx. Talk to me a little bit about the competitive forces. Like, what is the kind of pitch process like? How difficult is it to, even for example, explain to folks that there is a big difference between the inference world versus the training world in terms of what's required from a chip perspective? Yeah,
a lot of our customers are cloud service providers, right? They're trying to build token factories. They're trying to provide AI services. They're trying to offer inference services. It's actually not that difficult because most of the folks are trying to figure out how to actually make better economics on their service. And it's actually pretty simple. You actually have to increase the revenue on the tokens and reduce the cost of your CapEx. That's it, right? And so most people are offering NVIDIA-based services, which is normalized across industry today. So the hard part about charging more, if you're offering the same thing, is differentiation. So with SambaNova, we're able to give you ultra high performance, very, very low latency across a broad range of very custom agents. Now you're starting to actually bring that into the mix. You can bring some of the technology into the mix with what you have with existing infrastructure and find ways to offer differentiated services. As soon as you're differentiated, you can charge a higher price, right? Otherwise, it's a commodity. Everyone's serving the same type of tokens, the same type of models. How do you raise your price, right? And so for service providers, you have to have the differentiation, that secret sauce that they provide, and SambaNova allows you the opportunity to do that. And on this side, whether you already have NVIDIA infrastructure, you don't want to actually have to keep adding more, and so what you can do is take what runs on SambaNova better, route it over there, frees up all these racks for you to reuse. And so then you lower the cost. And if your revenue increases, your cost lowers, now you're starting to do significantly better.
And what do you hear and see around the speed versus cost debate? Like, how are you seeing those kind of market dynamics playing out, right? Obviously, it makes sense to sweat assets like it always did. But in the world of AI, especially in the agentic era, speed and performance is, absolutely the most important game in town. So, is cost becoming less of a consideration? Like, what are you hearing?
It's an incredible consideration. We have, we see every day, how people are financing these giant gigawatt data centers with all this infrastructure, and who's financing behind it, all of that. But you hit it right on the nose, which is, we have this chart that shows on this axis is basically, the throughput that a service provider needs to achieve in order to make money. This is basically the performance that the end user wants to see, otherwise they won't use your service. And so if you look at that, there's a Goldilocks zone where the user wants to use your service and the service provider can make money, right? Because if you make it really, really fast for the end user and your batch is really low, the users are happy, but the service provider is not generating enough tokens. Right? If you batch everybody up and you basically make all the users wait, right? Get on this giant bus, it's before we take off, it's great for the service provider, but the end user is waiting for a long time and they're unhappy. And so really it is that balance between trying to figure out how to get the economics right for the service provider while generating high performance output for the end user. And I said more and more, people are expecting real time. And so you're going to have to solve this problem. But without the right economics, it's really hard to keep dumping more and more money into your infrastructure without recovering a lot of those the costs back.
The Goldilocks zone, I'm going to have to coin that.
yeah, it's really important.
So talk to me about the partnership with Intel. Have they been a customer? Talk to me about the process, I guess, by which you guys have decided to build this and how this came about and what the next kind of 18 months or so looks like on the partnership roadmap for these two powerhouses coming together. Yeah,
well, look, Intel's been on our cap table since 2019, and they were a lead investor for our Series B. And so they've been partners with us for a long time. And what's great about this is, as we enter this phase of SambaNova, really what you're starting to see is a certain scale that, as a SambaNova by itself, is hard to achieve. And with Intel, what you now have is reach.
Yeah.
You have
huge customer base.
Yeah, you have a huge customer base. Everyone knows who Intel is, right? And the capital that they can actually provide, the access they can provide. And with SambaNova, with our technology being as differentiated as it is today, it really provides a very good entry point, a very good alternative to existing solutions. And so as we kind of discussed over the years and trying to figure out what are great ways to work together, the timing arrived at a point where we said, look, we can really partner around this, use a lot of the assets that Intel has, because agentic solution is not just about AI chips, right? There's CPU, there's networking, there's memory, there's all these assets that have to come together along with the AI chips, the accelerators. And so together in this partnership we have with Intel, we're going to optimize the entire stack and really light it up.
And when you came together at Intel to say, okay, we can help you solve these problems, right? Are there particular industry verticals, particular low-hanging fruits within, because they have a huge customer base, right? Those guys are pretty much serving pretty much anyone and everyone. So where is the kind of immediate, I guess, requirement or need? Was there one that kind of stood out?
Look, what we hear a lot, and I think most people are talking about this, is the cost structure for these cloud service providers, neoclouds, and even the large clouds, right? That you're trying to figure out how to scale along with the demand for AI. And people are building these giant data centers all over the world. People are putting new nuclear power plants in different places to power these data centers. And so the scale that people are trying to support the AI market is outpacing our ability to do so. And so the opportunity came for us to think about how to drive the efficiency of the scaling. If I can provide you an infrastructure that outperforms the incumbent at a fraction of the power, suddenly there's a new opportunity for most of these players, large or small, to deliver much, much more efficient services, much more differentiated services, and allow them to mix with the existing infrastructure they have without losing all the legacy that you've had with kind of building on traditional GPUs, and yet offering new things that others potentially don't have to really create this differentiated offering.
Certainly creates a whole new dynamic layer to the offering, right? Like for sure.
Yeah.
350 million, Series E. We hear Series E, we think, are we going to see you guys ringing the bell here at the NYSE? I certainly hope so, but tell me, what's ahead? It's a big round to raise. It's also a very capital intensive space you're in, right? So 250 million probably was a whole lot more money maybe 10 years ago than is in this agentic world. But what are you guys working towards? Like what's coming up from a product roadmap perspective? Yeah, no, it's super exciting. Look, the great thing about kind of where we are today is we're delivering technology, hardware, software to suppliers. We don't have to build our own clouds, right? Which you've seen other players kind of in our space that are building chips having to invest in their own clouds. We don't do that. We're super excited by the fact that our technology can go into cloud service providers as CapEx that they spend with SambaNova and allow them to actually make those offerings. And so that's one thing that we're really excited by, that technology is at a place now that we can actually sell it to our customers and have them offer those services in a differentiated way. And so with this round, what we can do is now drive everything we wanted to do, on our roadmap with multiple chips still coming, right? And still continue to invest aggressively. And with the business starting to come in with a very positive cash flow, it allows us to add that together and then really drive our long-term plans in a very aggressive way. Well, we're certainly delighted to have you back here on theCUBE, and we'll be watching from the sidelines, cheering you guys on. Excited to see what the next 6 months brings. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Yeah, thank you for having us. I'm Gemma Allen, coming to you from the theCUBE studios here at the New York Stock Exchange. This is our AI Factory series in collaboration with NYSE Wired. Thanks so much for watching.